Principle 1, identifying the idol. That's where we're beginning. So according to Romans 1, those who reject the Creator will create an idol. Again, Romans 1 says there are no neutral positions. You're either of God or you're not. Either you have the appropriate understanding of the creation order, God and then man and then creation, or you are supplanting one of those in place of God.
Right. Either you accept the truth or you suppress the truth.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
They will absolutize some power or element inanimate within the cosmos, elevating it to an all-defining principle, a false absolute.
Right. So the idea here is that they take from general revelation something in the creation,
right,
and then make that into God.
Right. And we covered some of those things.
And it becomes their idol.
Right.
Actually,
it's not only carved wooden figures. It's also your job or your money or sex,
your philosophy or whatever.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're replacing God as a God substitute. So this could be a God of reason, like the enlightened rationalists made, imagination, like the romanticists. The nation as nationalists do, an economic version of sin of salvation like the Marxists have done. God cannot be rejected without putting something else in his place.
Boy, that is a really good point, right? So it's kinds of, once you reject God, you need something else. It's kind of like, they say nature abhors a vacuum, right?
Right.
And so it's the same kind of way in the spiritual realm, right? The spiritual realm abhors a vacuum. And so if you get rid of God, something else is going to come in. Whether you acknowledge it or realize it or not, something will come in to take God's place.
Right. It's kind of like the argument you hear too that atheism isn't a religion. It's just one less belief in a God that you believe in. Well, okay. I mean, I'll take that as that, but you're still not having the same foundation in how I look at things that I come at things with. So what lens are you looking at the world through? Whatever you've replaced God with, and you can say that, well, I never had God. Okay, what eyeglasses are you looking at the world to make sense of the world? How do you view things as evidence? What do you take for? How do we determine truth? Are there moral absolutes? Why is there something rather than nothing? How did we get here?
What's the ultimate reality?
Yeah,
right? That kind of thing. Right?
And I don't know is a fair assessment, but at some point in one of those questions, you're going to come to a spot where what your actions are can then be delved back into what you actually believe. So you can claim a lot of those things as I don't know. Are there moral absolutes? Well, I don't know. But then, is it okay if I take your wallet without your permission? Well, no. Okay, so there are some things that are.
I thought you didn't know, right?
Yeah, there are some things that are wrong. Now, to what extent those are, we can have that conversation.
Right.
But see how this has helped to identifying, even digging down to see where what they're claiming is not always what their true label is, and they might not even know it. It's not even a critique against them saying I don't know. Maybe they do not know. Yeah. Empiricism. People might not know what that is. So this helps you kind of dig down to then build back up to their kind of first cause, their first look at how they look at the world. God cannot be rejected without putting something else in his place. Most of history is made up of God's surrogates, she says. Every human personality, community, thought form, culture will be based on some ultimate concern or ultimate allegiance, either God or some God substitute, from Timothy Keller. Scripture has given us the key to unlock this history, as we see in Romans 1, but not just in Romans 1. We see in Ezekiel that he calls secular beliefs idols of the heart.
Ezekiel 14:3, she notes there. Yeah.
The Hebrew word for heart isn't kind of the emotional response that we get today. The Hebrew word means the innermost self, including the will, mind, moral character, and spiritual commitment. So it's more than just I have an emotional response. I really have a heartfelt conviction about this. Well, what does that mean? Is that just well, I feel squishy towards it, or is there more to it? And even the Greek word for heart, kardia, likewise means the center, the core of the person, the being. And I believe when back in the day, the people kind of had the gut reaction. The splanknoid is the Greek word for it, where you kind of feel with your gut how intense you are about something. Thus, idols of the heart are convictions that engage us most deeply and drive our behavior, because those are how we look at the world, and then from there we might not know the specific label for it that philosophers and scientists give it, but it's through those first beliefs that cause us to have action.
Right, and it's virtually impossible to have beliefs without having them affect our behavior. What we believe affects our behavior, right? Regardless of it. And so it's not a neutral issue. It's not an unimportant issue. What people believe ultimately affects their behavior.
Right. Everyone believes something in the sense that they must assume some principle is fundamentally true. Atheists often fail to recognize that they are in the same boat as everybody else. A common mantra is that atheism is not a belief. Atheism is merely a lack of belief in God or gods. But it is impossible to think without some starting point. If you do not start with God, you must start somewhere else. You must prove something else as the ultimate, eternal, uncreated reality that is the cause and source of everything else. Even if you don't view it as ultimate, eternal, uncreated, or reality, there's still something that you're referring to when you talk about the world, or you're not having conversations with people and you believe that you're the only mind in the world. And at least then you're being consistent with that belief.
Right. So the atheist can't say, they can say, oh, it's just, atheism is just a lack of belief in God, right? No. You must propose, she says, something else as the ultimate, eternal, uncreated reality. You have to do that, right? Again, because something has to take up that vacuum. Right. So we shouldn't allow them to get away with that kind of talking. Right. Yeah.
And so we have these claims that stand up to testing, and so both sides should test what they purport. The advantage of using biblical terms like idols is that it levels the playing field. Secular people often accuse Christians of having quote unquote faith, while claiming themselves base their convictions purely on facts and reasons. Like Spock from Star Trek. Not so. If you press any set of ideas back far enough, eventually you reach an ultimate starting point, something that is taken as self-existent reality on which everything depends. The starting assumption cannot be based on prior reasoning, because if it were, you could ask what was where that reasoning starts, and it often leads to an infinite regress. At some point, every system of thought has to say, this is my starting point. So, if you talk about your ultimates, so what's your ultimate starting point? Well, reason's my ultimate starting point. Okay, well, how are you able to reason? I view whatever this allows me to reason. Okay, well, that's actually your ultimate starting point. So reason isn't really your starting point. Whatever is above that is your ultimate reasoning point. And that's when we get into the so-called problem of circularity, and not all circles are created equal. And so I think we get into that later. So everyone has one, and we all have to find the starting point of our beliefs.
Yeah, good.
Although you cannot argue backwards to their prior reason, you can argue forward by spelling out, one, their implications, and two, testing both the logic that they derive from this and the experience.
Yeah, so this is kind of interesting, right? She says, although we cannot argue backwards to their prior reasoning, we can spell out the implications of what does this imply, and what is the consequences of reasoning like this, right? That's what she's trying to get at here. And so we can test those implications by the test that she's going to eventually give us, right? Experience and reason, logic. Right?
Yeah. And if you're using the Jason Lyle's "don't answer," this part would be the answer part.
Yeah.
Take the worldview and say, okay, let's assume this is true. These are the implications, kind of a reductio ad absurdum type deal. Right.
So oftentimes, it would seem like we're saying, well, if everybody sees through their own lenses, then truth or whatever is just relative, right? But that's not really what we're saying. What we're saying is, yes, people do see through their own lens, but there is a right way to see things. So it's not relative. Their truth does exist, right? And so you have to then find that, right? So it's not everybody sees through their own lens, and therefore, we just are looking through the Christian lens. No, there is a right way to view the world. And so just lensing isn't the final answer. The answer is let's get at there is a true right lens that we need to find and get to.
Yeah, the three blind men touching the elephant. Each one views it as something completely different. What the point of the story is that none of the men are correct. And that the elephant is more than the sum of the parts that they're feeling.
So there is really an elephant that's different than what each one of them thinks, right? And so the person telling the story apparently is either not blind or it can avoid the problems that being blind has. Because they can see the whole elephant.
Maybe reveal it in written and spoken word.
Or at least they assume that their perspective is the whole elephant, right?
Elephant-like.